One of the prevailing impressions was of a deep sense of shock that after so many years of war, after the creation of the new nation, that they'd found themselves back where they were. We went up to Bor, landed at the airstrip there, and saw the first bodies on the road as we drove off the airstrip, and smelt the dead who had been unburied for 2 weeks in 40 degrees of heat. And we drove through this town that in places looked quite normal, but the houses which were normal were mostly full of dead bodies, and in places was just wrecked. And we went to the cathedral, and there we found the bodies of the clergy and lay leaders and others who'd fled there, next to one filled-in mass grave and an empty mass grave, which I consecrated. We stood with the bodies at our feet and the smell of death around us, and we prayed. The shock of so much destruction, of a town of 250,000 looted, destroyed, everyone driven into the bush or across the river, perhaps 6,000 dead, perhaps more, half of them buried, all the women raped, the most atrocious sexual violence, was very overwhelming, very desperate, and shocking not only to us, obviously, coming from the kind of place where you don't see that stuff very often, but also even to the South Sudanese who have seen much suffering. I think there are a significant number of things we can do. I think don't forget is the biggest. We must be battering at the gates of heaven in prayer. Remorseless, unceasing prayer. As we pray, our minds and hearts are shaped by the wisdom and power of the Spirit of God. And as we pray, we engage with God in the struggle against human evil. Secondly, there are practical measures, down-to-earth, day-to-day measures, prevent the supply of arms, hold up to ignominy those who fuel the conflict in one way or another. Thirdly, make it clear that there will be no impunity for war crimes, of which there are many. And fourthly, equip those, particularly like the bishops, who will be responsible for developing a culture of a society of reconciliation. And fifthly, meet the needs of the refugees, the IDPs. The fact that the Archbishop and Primate is himself in charge of the reconciliation effort and was summoned from a meeting in London urgently to take part in the first face-to-face meeting of the President and the rebel leader speaks volumes as to the centrality of the Church. I observed a church which was doing what Anglicans, by the grace of God alone, seem to be really rather good at doing, which is building bridges everywhere. It's the churches that are the most effective networks of support across even front lines. You see God in it, in everything from a church that has mobilized against despair in the South Sudan, when they could have just rolled over and said, this is, what can we do? On the contrary, they are leading the struggle against violence. I see God in it in the extraordinary fact that after half a century of civil war, and the hardening that that causes, that we could stand in Bor and see people weeping with compassion because the Spirit of God still moves in love in their hearts.